Hi there. Welcome to the introduction to the Enneagram Type 7 video. If you've made it this far, you already know I'm Sarah Lynn with Enneagram MBA. Not going to talk anymore about myself really now or even during the workshop because I'm really excited to get to know you more during that workshop and how you most relate to the Type 7, questions you have, experiences you have as a unique human being who most identifies with a Type 7, or have an arrow or a wing to a 7, or you're just wanting to learn more about that Type 7 energy. I'm looking forward to meeting you, getting to know you a little bit more through this Type 7 conversation. So we'll talk more at that point. This video is intended to be informational. It's meant to be either one, a starting point for those of you who may not know very much at all about the Type 7. Maybe you've read some things, maybe you've gotten some test results back. Welcome to being Type 7, or most resonating with the Type 7. You're going to get some additional general information to help validate that is your dominant type, and get to know the type and ultimately yourself a little bit better, so that when you show up to the workshop on Wednesday, July 7th, we don't have to get into the basics. We're ready to get into the good stuff. And not that this isn't the good stuff, but the conversation that we can only have live, right? And then the second thing that this is going to do is that if you are pretty familiar with the Type 7 or know a few things, this is meant to be a refresher and get you excited and energized about what is to come for the live workshop. It's also hopefully going to clarify some questions that you've had, and then give you, hopefully spark some questions for you to show up to the workshop with, because at the end of the day, that is what I care most about. I'm not doing a workshop just to host a workshop. I want to answer your questions. I want to help you to get to know you even more. And so I'm going to be pulling up the Type 7 reference guide that you have the full PDF version to. I'm going to go through the highlights of it. I'm going to add in some things that are going to be helpful and maybe didn't make it in there, or that I want to clarify a little bit further, but you'll have that PDF to refer back to take notes in if you want to. And then when we meet for the workshop, we're going to talk more about how to turn this information into a transformation. Small, big, but what to do with the information, because it's one thing to be self-aware, and then it's another thing to participate in your growth, right? You can be as self-aware, you can know, but keep repeating the same things, but you're aware, right? Awareness is the first step. We're talking about that. And then we're also going to talk about kind of how to manage ourselves, and then our relationships even with others. So let me pull up the Type 7 slides for you, and not even slides, just pages. And we will get into it. I do want to say before we do, though, that you may not resonate with every single thing that we talk about as a Type 7 today or during the workshop. That's great, because you're a unique, complex human being that goes beyond just a single number on the Enneagram. So I would encourage you, if something doesn't resonate, to, kind of sit with it, question it. Is it because you don't want that to resonate? You wish that did not resonate? Or is it truly because there's something else? And that will give you kind of a jumping off point to get to know yourself from that little new perspective, from that angle. Maybe it's a question, maybe it's a thought you haven't ever thought about before. What I share about a Type 7 may not resonate, but maybe there's something else that comes up for you when you ask yourself those questions. So this is going to be helpful, whether everything resonates, which it definitely won't, or not. And it's just meant to, give you some additional insight, and then help you ask some questions so that you can get to know yourself a little bit more. And then what we share here are kind of the stereotypical characteristics and qualities of a 7 Again, that doesn't mean that all 7s are this way, which is why I'm so excited to talk to you on the live workshop. So as a 7, as any Enneagram number, these are some of the big things that play into our type. So the thing at the end of the day that is going to make you most identify with a 7 is that core desire and core fear. You could act like a 2, you could act like an 8, right? But if your core desire most aligns with the 7, that's the thing that makes you a type 7 or most identifies. And I say you're a type 7, makes you a type 7. I'm trying to get into a better habit of just saying what most resonates, because again, you're not a number, you're not a type, but the type might most identify you. That might be the most relevant one out of the 9, and it is still going to be really telling and really helpful. So I'll probably still say that I'm trying to get out of the habit of not though. So you might catch me correcting myself. The other thing that's going to play a big part into how you express a type 7 is your subtypes. There's 3 different subtypes. We're going to talk about those briefly later on. The other thing that's going to play a big part is your level of development, your level of health. So actually, when you get to be the healthiest version of a 7, you're not going to look like a 7 at all. And then the average zone for the 7 is typically what we see as kind of that stereotypical 7 qualities, characteristics. And then there is an unhealthy range that we'll look at briefly. You can dive into more in your workbook or your reference guide. That is going to probably require some additional support, probably some professional support and resources, because there you're taking on the most unhealthy qualities of that type. Let's see here. Excuse me. And then other things that we're going to talk about briefly is your childhood message, your childhood pattern, where you make decisions, the type of energy that you bring to going after what you want, how you handle conflict, relational patterns that you'll tend to repeat. And then our wings, whether you most identify with a 6 or an 8, will also determine how that 7 is expressed, as well as, on this specific day, are you stressed out or are you feeling like you're growing and you're living your best life? And we'll talk about the difference between arrows and levels of health, and what that means, and how to even tap into your stress number, which for us is a 1, but how to tap into the healthy qualities of a 1 too, to show up as the best version of ourselves as a 7. So you are a 7, or the 7 is your dominant type if you resonate with this core desire right here and core fear. So the core desire is to be satisfied, to be fulfilled, to be content, to be happy. And so the opposite is true. The thing that we're running away from is being deprived of options, feeling trapped in pain, having hard conversations, dealing with hard feelings. So it can express itself when we're not the most healthiest version of ourselves into this frantic escapism. So we have this desire, but it can deteriorate here. We'll talk more about that during the workshop. Would love to hear from you though, as you think about this for yourself, or even as one of your arrows or wings, how this shows up for you in your life and in your business too. Where do you find yourself? Maybe it plays into the type of business you started. Maybe you have multiple businesses or multiple careers, or have had, just kind of thinking about that, how that has showed up. I definitely want to talk about when we get together. You're going to see the stereotypical 7 looking upbeat, free-spirited, spontaneous, positive. Also, sometimes we might look scattered and impulsive. And so those are qualities that may not necessarily be true for everybody. At the end of the day, it is this core desire and core fear. We do have a way with thinking best case scenario though. So Again, that has its benefits, positive vibes, you know, all the great energy, happy, looking on the bright side. However, there's times where that's not helpful, and we'll talk more about that later, but that's how you know. Our center of intelligence as a type 7 is we're in our heads. We're joined with our 5s and our type 6s, and we're thinking. We're thinking about thinking. We're over analyzing. We're planning. We're strategizing, which can lead to, you know, anxiety, stress, feeling frustrated because we just can't figure it out, right? I would love for you to take some notes here on how this shows up in your business, you know, how you see you living in your head for maybe the detriment, ways that it's held you back, but also ways that being in your head, you know, strategizing, planning, weighing the pros and cons, making the list has helped you. Okay. As 7s, we have an orientation to time for the future. So we're very future focused. We're constantly thinking what's next. We're in this category with our 3s and our 8s, constantly like not necessarily living in the moment and just thinking like we could be doing the most fun thing in the world, but our mind is going to be like, what's next? So I would also love to hear how in business that has helped you, and then places where you could see that it's maybe been a struggle where you're constantly focused on, you know, the next big thing, the next idea. And how that showed up for me is sometimes I'm so focused on the next big idea, the fun idea. Oh, like, let's start this, let's do this, that I leave a mess, a tornado behind me of all the ideas that I've had what's next energy to, but didn't stay long enough in the present to actually implement and execute. So I have all of this behind me that did not get completed. So would love to hear from you on that. Our vice as a 7 is what they call gluttony. Each type has a specific vice, kind of like the 7 deadly sins, except there's 9. And for the 7, it's gluttony. And that doesn't just mean with food, although it can. I'm actually reading a book called Eating for the Enneagram, or Enneagram for Eating. And it talks about the different struggles that each type has when it comes to diet and exercise, and overeating and overindulging is definitely one of them. But this applies to all areas of our life, specifically this almost like this stimulation junkie, constantly looking and needing excitement, needing new ideas, having to have plans, activities, needing all the connections, collecting experiences, which, you know, has like, that's great until it gets to this excess point, right? So I'm going to ask you the same thing. I would love for you to kind of reflect on and be prepared maybe to share a little bit about how you see this show up in your life and any ways that it's expressed itself as you have started your business. Maybe again, this goes back to ideas. Maybe this goes back to doing too many things, whatever that might be for you. And then we have a defense mechanism, each type. And as a type 7, this defense mechanism is called rationalization, where because we have this like positive outlook about everything, and there's always the positive side to everything, we're able to rationalize away all the uncomfortable things, any unacceptable thoughts, feelings, or behaviors that we might do, both ourselves or in others. We'll deflect those, we'll ignore those through this defense mechanism of rationalization. That's a hard one. That was a hard one for me. I won't project that onto you, but that was a hard one for me to swallow, because I started to realize, gosh, how much I did do that. We're not going to get into mistyping. I would encourage you to read through this in your guidebook, because, you know, if you have any questions or want to continue to clarify and confirm your type, this will be helpful. And then we can talk about questions on the workshop. Childhood message. The thing I want to talk about here is that it's not okay to depend on anyone for anything. If that resonates with you, I want to hear about it on Wednesday on our workshop. You don't have to necessarily share, but I want to encourage everybody to stop for a minute, maybe journal about this, think about it for just a second. I know you're going to think about it, and see how this is showing up, how it has showed up, and how it probably is showing up right now. Feeling like you have to do everything yourself, putting that stress on you, not wanting to be vulnerable and bringing in, maybe help to your business or even in your relationships that ultimately overspill into your business. So if any of this resonates and you have specific moments, or you can see this for me was a huge eye-opener when I heard about the childhood patterns and messages. And so I want to talk about that on the workshop a little bit. So I want to give that to you now. And then the healing message for this is, you will be taken care of. You will be taken care of. And so we'll talk more about exactly what that means, what that looks like. But here is the gist for you to start marinating on. And I want you to at least be aware of. Our arrows for stress and health for a 7 is when we're living our best lives, we are taking on the best qualities of a 5, which means we can sit still, we can be in silence, we can be by ourselves, we can be present, we can be, we don't have to be moving, which I said, you can be still. And so those are great things that we're going to talk about how to implement and embody more in our day-to-day, how to channel that energy when we're feeling really stressed. You might notice that you show up as an unhealthy 1. So, we are working harder. We're feeling like we're the only one that can do it right. We attempt to impose the limits on our behavior, be really restrictive, follow the rules, maybe even punish ourselves. Our inner critic might come out even louder. We might feel the need to, educate and school others on what's right, and be super critical of ourselves and of others. However, there are growth and healthy versions of a 1, healthy qualities of a 1, the discipline, the structure, the routines that we'll talk about on the workshop that will also be a benefit to our life as a business owner and just as a human being. So your homework here is just to think about times where maybe you've noticed recently, maybe you're in one of them or in the past, where you've taken on those unhealthy qualities, you've been in stress. And then also pay attention to, have you noticed yourself growing, whether you just are new to the Enneagram or you've been studying the Enneagram for years? Where are some, because, at the end of the day, this is self-growth, personal development. And a lot of the advice kind of aligns with this, being in the present moment, being still, accepting what is. So I'd be curious to know what of these healthy 5 qualities you've noticed yourself doing in the past, or maybe you're living that right now. These are the levels of development, the levels of health that we were talking about at the very beginning. I want you to take some time to read through these and kind of see where you are. I have heard that there's going to be 1 that is an anchor point. And then once you kind of find the 1, when you're being brutally honest, and the only person this hurts or helps, if you're, to be honest about, is yourself. So, it doesn't impact me. If you want to say that you are, level 1, your top health as a 7, that's great. But if that's not true, if you're not willing to see maybe some of the reasons why that may not be true, maybe you're at, maybe you're really at a 5, who knows? Maybe you are at a 2 or a 1, and that is great. That's great. I want you to be honest and, own that as well. But look through these and just kind of see, where might my anchor point be? And then once you kind of have your anchor point selected, circled, whatever you're going to do with it, know that you're going to move up and down, 2, 1, 2, 3, maybe even. And then as you continue to grow as a human, learn about yourself more, that anchor point is going to be moved up so that your low is actually going to be higher than it was in the past, right? So like, you might be a level 4 And so your low point might be, a level 7. But as you, pull that level up to a level 2, your low point then might just be a level 5, And this is different than growth and stress. Growth and stress tends to be more kind of in the moment, day to day, maybe even week to week, where this is more kind of, month to month, year to year, bigger picture type of thing, like your overall health. Yes, you're going to have bad days. Yes, you're going to be stressed, but overall, where's your level of health here? So I'm going to encourage you to take a look and see where you're at on there. Wings are also something we're not going to spend a ton of time about, but I would, encourage you to read a little bit more about each one, see which one feels most relevant. These might change as you get older, as certain things are happening in your life. So just because you feel like a wing 8 right now doesn't mean that you won't necessarily change to a wing 6 later. Or you might need to tap into that wing 8 energy for a special project or presentation or a sales call. And then the other times you might need to tap into that, type 6 energy to execute a plan, to plan the plan, to strategize, to collaborate on something. So know about the healthy versions of those and some of the average behaviors, so that you can dip into either one and then kind of be aware of maybe when you're dipping into some of the unhealthy qualities that won't be super helpful. This I absolutely love. We are going to spend some time on the workshop talking about subtypes, which are natural instincts. I've also put what we call what I've learned as business instincts right here after those. These are 3 different types of energy that come from natural instincts as a human being. So first we had self-preservation, where we just needed to find food, water, shelter, the basic instincts. So that's kind of where that self-preservation comes from. And if that is your dominant type, you're looking at how you can, preserve your resources, your food, your knowledge, your friends. And so that's kind of where that comes from. Then we moved into this sexual or one-to-one energy as we progressed, where we needed to mate with another species in order to keep the species alive. And so that is this pioneering energy when you apply it to like a business context, where you're looking at that what's next energy. It's a little bit more aggressive, going out there, a little bit more intense. This describes the type 7 pioneering energy a little bit more. And then the third came, so we have preserving ourselves, mating so that we can grow the species. And then this is more about, the next level species that had herds and socialized. And so we developed that instinct, and no instinct is better than the other, by the way. It's just what comes most natural to you. And we have all 3 inside of us, but it will very much play a part into how our set type is expressed as a 7. And the social subtype for a 7 is actually the counter type. Each type has a counter type with the subtypes. And this just means that 7s typically tend to be a little bit more self-focused, whereas like a 2, for example, is very others focused. 7s are pretty self-focused. And then when you mix that with this social subtype, you get kind of, it almost tips it the other way. It's because a social 7 is looking at the group, paying attention to the group. They want to actually avoid being seen as self-centered, so they'll do things in order to look helpful. So you may not, your motive behind that action might be a little bit different, but sometimes our social type 7s tend to show up as 2. So if you'll probably have questions on this, this is really helpful too. And at some point I'll probably need to do a whole separate training on subtypes alone, because it gives so much information. And these are things that even if you don't know your type or somebody in your life or on your team, you can start to see the energy, the behavior of each 3 of these expressed to kind of get an idea what they value and care most about, and be able to have better, more empathetic, understanding conversations and relationships based on that. Our type 7s are in a couple different groups. We've talked about the center of intelligence. I want you to look through this. I want to hear again kind of what comes up for you that you've maybe overanalyzed, how you've used this for the betterment of your business, and maybe sometimes you have struggled with this. Our 7s are also in that positive outlook triad, rosy colored glasses. Again, this is information I just want you to be aware of. Ask questions on, reflect on, because we will be talking about how to use this and how to maybe overcome some of the things or move through some of the things, some of the ways that these groups may hold us back. Our 7s are also in this assertive stance, which we talked about, kind of that what's next energy, future oriented, are focused on not getting slowed down, moving fast and far. They are a little bit repressed in the heart tier, which means they just don't want to feel bad. They don't want to feel their feelings. They want to avoid their feelings altogether. I want you to reflect on this. I'm going to have some questions for you here. And then dealing with repeat issues. This is called kind of this relational triad, which for a 7, our feeling, we're over here with the 1s and the 4s, is this feeling of frustrated because we're constantly after, our 1s are after the perfect version of themselves and the perfect version, the right version of, kind of the greater good. Our 4s are kind of after this imagination, dream fantasy land and, playing out scenarios, but it just never is as good as it turns out to be, or never is as good as they imagine. And same thing with the 7, where we kind of idolize possibilities and opportunities, and yet that reality is never as satisfying as our imagination. So that can be really frustrating, and that can be really sad, and it can be really, it can prevent us from, being the best leader, being the best partner, being the best parent, and just, being the best to ourselves, because we're missing out on the present moment. And then this is in there just for fun. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about 7s and love. If you're interested in that, maybe that'll be a separate workshop. At work, I want you 7s to know that you are phenomenal visionaries. You see multiple possibilities and perspectives. You're really good at problem solving. You're very creative. The innovator is another title that sometimes gets attributed to a 7, sometimes a 5 as well, but optimism, enthusiasm, you're able to see what isn't there. And that is so magical. You look for ways to celebrate, and you're great brainstormers. I have a whiteboard behind me or in front of me that I'm looking at, and I love to fill it up. So I'd love to know where you see your strengths as a 7 currently playing out in your business. How have you been able to problem solve? What creative ideas have you been able to come up with that maybe others haven't seen? And then I'd also like for you to kind of consider maybe what are some of the struggles that are currently holding you back. It might be that you do have a lot of great ideas, but you're struggling to implement them. It might mean you just don't want to do anything that feels boring. So your accounting is piling up, your, receipts are everywhere. You don't have a great client relation management system, what are the systems in general, because they're just not as fun. tend to only look at the positive and not necessarily see some of the hard things that need to be seen. You definitely don't like to be told what to do, and will resent demanding clients. So just know that about yourself, and kind of consider, take inventory now where maybe you've seen some of these struggles show up. Where to go from here? We're going to talk about this on the workshop. Okay. The one thing that I do want you to kind of marinate on for sure right now is this settling statement of a 7. This was life-changing, eye-opening for me, where we're constantly as a 7 looking for adventure, looking for excitement, but going back to that core desire, we really just want to be satisfied. So can we feel satisfied without excitement? Can we feel satisfied being bored? Can we feel satisfied being still? Can we feel satisfied being alone? Does excitement always equal feeling satisfied? Have there been times where it's been exciting, there's been a lot going on, you've been around a lot of people, but that you haven't felt satisfied, right? So we're going to talk more about that too during the workshop. I can't wait to hear from you. But hopefully this was a helpful overview, gave you some additional information for this guide. You'll have this resource guide moving forward forever to help you, answer your questions when I'm not there, and just to be a quick reference if you need to jog your memory about something. If you have questions, which I hope you do, please bring them to the workshop. We're going to go through them, and then anything that we don't get through, don't worry, you will get your questions answered. So bring them all, even if there's 10 questions, I want to hear from them. I want to hear from you. Somebody else is probably asking the same question. I'm almost going to guarantee I've had a similar question. So bring those questions, bring your insight, bring your thoughts. I know you got a lot of them, 7. And I cannot wait to see you on Wednesday, July 7th at 6 p.m. All the links, all the information is in your inbox. If for whatever reason you didn't get that, let me know. And either myself or someone on my team will make sure that you get that.